Hello and welcome to another episode of the Transfer Show for Anfield Index Pro. You didn't think you'd see us again, did you? And yet here we are, Dave and I, to talk to you about, yes, I'm afraid it's true, further breaking stories. That's all they are, stories, but damn it, they're interesting. And there's a lot more heft to a few of them, especially the story we're going to begin with. But Dave, what is happening, man? April, and we are doing a second transfer show in 4 days.
I don't know if it's just because we're playing one game a week and the fact that, there's that transfer window one that opens on the 1st of June. Like, there's a few journos are saying, like, clubs are really trying to line stuff up, like, literally with the season ending and that opening 5 days later. The other thing is, there's release clauses involved, isn't there? Players that are attractive. So multiple clubs interested, everyone's trying to make the pitch. But for Liverpool especially, there's players going out, there's players going to be coming in, there's contracts finally progressing as well. There's just so much happening in a few days. It's brilliant.
You've got to love it. It gives us lots to talk about. If people could see the absolute state of our WhatsApp group, it's not a group, it's just me and you. Our WhatsApp thread is absolutely bananas. One thing after another. Usually you dropping something and me going, what? And then we have to talk it through. So yeah, lots to go on. And, we were skirting around the big story, which was what's going to happen around the contracts with Van Dijk and Salah. And we'd had the initial sort of hint at it from Ornstein in his interview, the one you were plugging. We then had Paul Joyce come out yesterday and talk about the Salah situation.
Yeah.
And we have obviously had Virgil saying what he said about progress. This is all very, very encouraging. And it seems, Dave, as if we're going to have the thing that all of us want, which is if we have to lose our generational, prime of his life talent in Trent Alexander-Arnold to those absolute dose bags in Real Madrid, at least let us keep the two guys who have pretty much made this season what it has been up until recent weeks, and let us roll into the next campaign with a chance of being immediately competitive. That seems to be the case, buddy. Talk us through it.
This has been, consider we've talked about this forever and being like, when do we start getting a little bit nervous that it's not developing or not happening? This has been a hell of a 48 hours, haven't we? Because like you said, the mix zone comments from Virgil, there's progress, thinking, right, we're going to hear something. Wouldn't it be nice if the other one, but let's not get greedy. Sod that. We got greedy yesterday, didn't we? About 5 p.m. What a way to almost finish your day. Mo Salah stories galore. The coordinated brief in there that Salah, as it says on the screen, Lewis Steele, we just had on for Media Matters, it's closer than ever. VVD also closed in on a deal. And we've put it to journalists. We've asked around. I asked Lewis directly. This, just to be clear, we don't get too giddy. This is when, not if. Absolutely. This is when, not if. Did say, because I know people, and we've already been dreaming about it, like, imagine if this was announced just before the West Ham game and we bounced into that and, everything that way. There's no guarantee of when it's going to be announced. It's kind of just a wait. But as John P has said there, of course it's a good day to be a Red. It's a good day to be a Red when you know that Van Dijk and Salah are 99% done. And exactly as you said, Trev, we're asking journalists this and they're all agreeing. And Lewis even said it. It's the old meatloaf in it. It's 2 out of 3 ain't bad. There's an air of inevitability that way. It could be a few weeks, as he said, before they announce it. But without actually doing the Axeline, that's, as close as we get. We're expecting it. The one thing that he did say, because you've heard this conspiracy theory, I call it the Robbie Fowler theory. And a lot of people buy into this, don't they? The whole, like, these two were already done, but they kept it quiet to make it easier for the Trent announcement and smoother that way. Everyone's been kind of, I believe that. And there's no conclusive proof. We'll never definitely know. But all the journalists we're speaking to are saying, no, their information has been, there's been a breakthrough in the last couple of weeks. And whilst people don't want to answer definitively no, there was the bit where I've been asking them, like, lads, just be honest with this. Is this the bit where they've gone, Trent's going, so there's part of his money, Virgil, there's part of his money, Salah, and everyone kind of smiles and won't say it definitively, but it's got that feel, doesn't it? It's fair to say. 2 out of 3, it ain't perfect, but we should be rejoicing at this. This is a good week for us, no two ways about it.
And yet we are filled with an online sort of community who are making all sorts of noises about it. Some of them saying, well, there goes the transfer budget, and other people saying, well, Virgil was shit for a couple of weeks, so that's why it's gotten done now, because he panicked and he's gone for a low ball number or whatever. So, I mean, wade through all of that, and you get to a situation where we have built this campaign on these two gentlemen. Yes, other lads have been tremendous. Of course they have. Mac, Grav at different times. Great. Super. But these two guys have had outstanding campaigns up until the last couple of games across all competitions. And it's without a doubt the only way that we rock into next campaign competitive is if we can have those as part of our spine. And it's very exciting. I gotta say, there's a lot of numbers floating around. The lads in the chat there are getting a bit excited about some of those numbers. Would you care to speculate, young Davis, on any of the numbers you've heard, or is that an absolute dumpster fire of a place to be?
I love a loaded gun. They can be fun in different ways, can't they, at certain times and in the right hands? It's the thing about the Salah number, which it kind of mystifies me a little bit. We've said this before on this transfer show. Rami Abbas, his agent, did a study with Harvard University, where they broke down Mo Salah's earnings from Liverpool, outside, how he manages all that. And Rami said Liverpool basically end up giving about Mo Salah around £1 million a week, because there's his base salary, the image element, and his performance-related bonuses like goals, assists, and everything like that. So it translated at £1 million a week. And anyway, now, like you said, everyone's going, £1 million a week, £1 million a week. Like, what's going on type of thing? Well, do you think we were paying him with slush puppies for his goals? Do you know what I mean? You don't bag that many goals and win that many golden boots and trophies for nada. We're talking about an elite footballer. So it kind of mystifies me a little bit. The one thing that all journos we spoke to did stress, because that's been a rumor about it, no pay cut. Everyone we've spoken about has said, no, there's no pay cut. We know that rumour's floating around. All our info for Liverpool is that is not the case. But it's that line. I'm stealing your line. It's not my money. Do I really care that much? We're not, we're not the bean counters. So as long as he stays, he stays.
There's one other place I want to take it, and I see Ethan in the comments has said that, he wouldn't be surprised, that Lewis Steele had said he wouldn't be surprised if they waited a few more weeks to announce it. And Ethan just saying he doesn't want to think about this crack anymore. And I'm very much in the same boat as him there, to be honest. It's tedious. And I have the way I'm looking at it, Dave, is I can't see a valid reason for not giving the team the boost. If not the team, the stadium, the boost of knowing that these two lads will be with us next season by announcing it ahead of the West Ham game and hoping to create a bit of a momentum, which, let's be honest, we could do with.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it is really, really minor details of the contract and they're still haggling on little bits, possibly just the snagging, if you want to call it that. But I'm with you. I would absolutely love it to be announced before West Ham. I just wonder, and this is all speculation, aren't we, whether the club are almost thinking this should be the good news and pickup. But it is good news. It is a pickup, no doubts about it. But do you know what's the ultimate pickup ahead of West Ham? Then two boys signed, doing the interviews, us going into that game, singing all the Van Dijk songs, all the Salah songs at the stadium, really just a wall of sound for West Ham. It would be absolutely the thing. Yeah, I'm like you. I can't remember a year like this. For all the time we've talked or been doing these things, We've mentioned contracts about 86,000 times on these shows, and it would be nice in a way to kind of put this to bed. But when that'll be, I just don't know.
No, and it is frustrating. So I do share that very much. JJR saying, imagine if they announced it before the Arsenal game. Christ on the bike, that would be something. We have a lovely Liverpool section to talk about here after the contracts. We still have Liverpool news. There's great rumours. We're going to start in a minute with two of the most strong rumours that are doing the rounds at the moment. But we do have some striker chat. We have some other contract stuff that's a little bit vague and woolly, but is out there or being circulated a little bit. So it'll be interesting to talk about that. And we also want to talk about agents and our lads. But let's start with Mr. Social Media, likey, Kirkez. Because this is remarkable stuff. He's out there liking all the things he can like. I saw someone earlier on my timeline, being quite sniffy about it and saying, it's a terrible way to be acting in relation to his current club and teammates and his unprofessional, all the rest of it. But it's absolute meat and drink for us on a show like this, so we can read all we like into it. I actually hit Jan Mulby up with social media likes as a possible reason why Kirkez might be coming to Liverpool last night, and he didn't bollock me out of it immediately, so that was a little bit of progress there. You gotta love that. But let's start with this Kirkez angle with the likes and all the rest of it. But there's also a very young and very promising defender that has been thrown into the mix by Mr. Ornstein, who's on a bit of a roll.
Yeah, I don't know if Richard Hughes maybe isn't as good as geography at Michael Edwards and is mistaking Bournemouth with Southampton, who we usually raid, but it does seem like Bournemouth are the new Southampton. Now, Milos Kerkez, a lot of people have been keen to point out, because people are doing the old, that's photoshopped, it's faked, blah, blah, blah. No, you can see it with his official account. He is liking the Van Dijk announcement by Romano. He is liking the Mo Salah announcement. We've talked about this and the almost feeling of McAllister style inevitability. Put it this way, if he's supposed to be keeping it quiet, he is doing the shittest job in football right now, Milos Kerkez, because all he's doing is just pouring diesel onto this fire. And like you said, social media, I've seen different reactions, like this is an unprofessional way to react. He should keep his head down till the end of the season. That was not my favourite. One of my favourites, Trev, I've got to be honest, look, and I don't know how old the lad was, but I'll put him between 18 to 25. We like a little bit of fun on the transfer show. As he put it, he said, Milos Kerkez is like a thirsty MILF for the Reds, and I'm here for it. And that's exactly my sentiment in that regard. If Milos Kerkez is just celebrating Liverpool contract news, what's not to like if he does end up here? Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, let's take that for nothing too serious on what it is. What we've got to take as serious. 3-4 weeks ago, did we not say the two names we're getting all the time that are serious interest in centre half? Mark Gay, Dean Huijsen. That's the ones we put serious money on. David Ornstein today did it in his Q&A, did an article straight afterwards. I mean, look at the options this kid's got. Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Newcastle, Tottenham have all met his reps. Basically, in simple terms, this kid is going to pick where he wants to go, isn't he, realistically? All the offers are on the table. There is a mention, as we talked about in WhatsApp, that ultimately Spanish international, his dad talked about it a fair bit, as we've said. He's talked about it, that he would love Real Madrid to get involved. That's the absolute dream for him. But Real Madrid don't really need a centre-half right now, do they? They've got a young lad. They've got the cash earmarked for, well, one of our players to start with, haven't they, as well? So it's not really like they're shopping for centre-halves. The one thing that no one will know, and everyone's asking around about Huijsen, is if Arsenal, Chelsea, Newcastle and Spurs all want you, Trev, and Liverpool are in for you, Liverpool's pitch has got to be the best, hasn't it? We're never going to win the financial war. We're never going to win that because, Chelsea will offer 8 years plus a year, like for something stupid. We're never going to win the financial war. So what you've got to win is this is your progress to being a world star. And I've seen people say, well, if Van Dijk signs a 2-year, there's that. The only thing is with this kid, if Van Dijk stays, which he's going to, and Konate stays, as you expect, Liverpool selling him third choice straight away. That just seems difficult to do a little bit, isn't it? I'd love to know how Liverpool are pitching it to this kid, trying to convince him, like, your future's here. Is he prepared to be that patient when he's in the first team already? It's a tough one. That being said, he's going in the summer. Everyone's cleared. Someone's triggering that release clause. It's going to be one of them. They might all trigger it. Dean Huijsen, Papa Huijsen, if he can get Real Madrid, will pick where this kid ends up. But we said he clearly wants to move. We want him. We'll have to wait and see what happens.
You're talking about the pitch. I mean, does it get better for a young up-and-comer? Then come and learn your trade alongside Virgil van Dijk. Come and be the world-class player that you have the potential to be alongside Virgil van Dijk. And, when you think about it, Konate is, for such a unit, quite a delicate flower. Yeah. So there are possibilities for a lot of minutes there. And it might just be sold to him that, we've heard lots and lots of talk about Konate maybe being on his bike. There's the PSG stories that wouldn't go away. So, yeah. I mean, who knows what the pitch is. But yeah, as you say, if it comes down to anything even vaguely resembling a financial contest, we've got nothing but evidence upon evidence of Liverpool being beaten into submission by all comers on that, but especially the likes of Chelsea and anyone else who has that infinity money pool. Mark Guéhi, you mentioned as well. Is there anything new on that? Because I keep seeing pictures of the lad on social media, but no links to any stories of any note. It's just people saying, what about him? So is this coming from anywhere in particular? Did Ornstein mention him again or something? Was that what it was?
He did. There was a line in his Q&A about Mark Guéhi and his future, mentioning a Liverpool-related question. It's one that we've had for weeks and months. In our chat, we've mentioned it on the transfer show as well. The thing about Mark Guéhi is he's a very respectful, humble guy, very religious as well. So he is not creating any noise whatsoever. Even last summer, when Newcastle had bid after bid rejected, when there was a year left on his deal, so everyone assumed it would happen. No noise from the player, head down, Crystal Palace captain, loves the club. Clearly, though, wants to move on, with the greatest respect to Palace, to a bigger club, doesn't he? Pastures new, a new challenge. He's had the Euros, the England international matches, so he wants to go to the next level. Fair play to him, but you're not going to hear those type of noises out the Guéhi camp. It's very different to Papa Huijsen, who will just retweet Real Madrid kit links to Dean Huijsen and all the other bits that he does.
Yeah, Mark Guéhi, just checking, turns 25 in July. There's an awful lot to be said for a plug-and-play Premier League-ready footballer of talent and class. He's an international. But I know the immediate argument that you're going to hear is he's too small for a centre-half. But is he too small for an Arnie Slot centre-half? We know he's maybe a little bit on the short side for a Jurgen Klopp centre-half, but maybe we're doing things different. Who knows? Interesting one, for sure. Can we, if you don't mind, just shake up the order of things and go to the strikers next so that we have another little bit of enjoyable, titillating news before we start getting a bit grim about some of the news we've heard around contracts, other contracts, and people's families sticking their oar into discussions. Like, we'll finish on those slightly more downbeat stories, but let's look now at the strikers that we're being linked with. And there were quite a few. We all heard the stories. It started with Isak and it's remained with Isak, but all of us, I think, in our heart of hearts, believe he'll be too expensive. There was talk of Pedro. There was talk of Liam Delap. There was talk of, who I think I called Rory on the last show, fair play to me, throwback to his 48-year-old lad doing long throws. There was also Ekitike as well. That's a name and a link that's been there permanently. We heard the lad from Atletico Madrid as well. That was exciting, people. And then in the week, over the last couple of days, in fact, I think since we did our last show, we had Victor Osimhen stuff, maybe just before it and again after it. So there's a lot going on there. What do we know in terms of the ones that are looking more realistic or hopeful, and the ones that maybe are starting to drift away from that kind of, likely bracket?
Yeah, I said it to you before we came on air. It's like that 80s game anyone used to play it, like Guess Who. Do you remember when you had to guess the character and you'd be like, has he got glasses? Is he wearing a hat? And you knock him down one by one type of thing till you're left with a name. And even in April, it feels a little bit like we're playing that game somewhat. So, yeah, there's been a real mix of some that I think it's fair to say you can put a pen right through. Some maybe a pencil. Some don't touch at all. It's really important to say, though. So in terms of who I think it's fair to put a pen in unless something big changes, as Lewis Steele and a few other journalists have said to us, João Pedro. Liverpool have watched him. Liverpool do like him. In simple terms, Brighton are rich and demanding a massive fee that Liverpool consider, a good player. But if you think a player, and I'm spitballing a bit here, people, so don't bang on these figures, but if you think a player's worth 60 million, the club quote you 100, and you don't think they'll go below 80, it's not going to get done, is it, realistically? That's the nature of football. You always have a figure there. So I think it's fair to say, unless something changes, João Pedro, that one. Liam Delap. Now, we mentioned a lot of people scoffed at this, didn't they, Trev, about Liam Delap? The nerds like him, the profile, the amount and what it was, and the raw attributes and what they think they could do with him in terms of the analysis, the shooting and all that. And loads of people, no. And now everyone's after him, aren't they? As all the stories are and things. And people are like, oh, yeah, Liam Delap's good. It's like, yeah, we said this in terms of how the analysts were looking at it last week. The big problem with Liam Delap for us, everyone realises he might be a bargain at the amount. And there's a lot of clubs in there. And I'll kind of come to that in the Premier League section just to give sort of full context for that. But it's very difficult now, I think, for Liverpool to do. A bit like the way we just talked about Huijsen. There's others that can sell it better to Delap, I think, in that regard, in terms of minutes and the overall situation that way for his development. So those are the two that you put kind of pencil against. One that don't touch at all, Hugo Ekitike. There's quite a few journalists now, and people say smoke without fire. All the journalists we're speaking to, we did say the comments have largely been coming from his agent, bigging them up, but journalists who said, listen, we've asked more, we've explored. Lewis said it on the last bit. A lot of people are saying Liverpool have spoke to his agents. Keep an eye on this. Do not rule Hugo Ekitike out. And for natural reasons, the age, the pace, the profile. Yes, there's a Bundesliga tax and people will look at that. But there's a lot of attributes you can be so clear as to why he's on the list. We've no doubt he's on the list. And you just wonder, like, guess who, as others get ruled out one by one, someone's actually got to stay there and be bought, haven't they? So is it him? Who knows on that? And then the other one, and people scoffed at this, Victor Osimhen. Again, as Lewis said, another journalist, no one will rule this out. And they won't rule it out because of what happened in January, Trev. Victor Osimhen was 24 hours from being a Liverpool player. What stopped it? He couldn't sort out what he believed were the loyalty payments that Napoli owed him. Now, fair play to Ben Boxak, who we know well. He actually wrote a story about this, and we went sort of chasing it down a hole to see, is there anything in this? And this info's come out bit by bit. Osimhen was pretty much agreed it all with Liverpool. Forget all this talk of 500 grand a week, you want stupid wages, blah, blah. It wasn't that. It was within our structure. All that stopped it is the Napoli owner is mental, as we know. Osimhen, stubborn, they just couldn't negotiate because he was like, you're leaving, I don't owe you loyalty payments. And obviously all that came in type of thing as well. Darwin Núñez missed that PSV game because the deal was getting done with Saudi on the premise that Osimhen was coming in. That's how close Victor Osimhen was to being on loan at Liverpool.
Dave, hang on, because this is mind-blowing stuff for a lot of people, right? So just to clarify, we had this guy that close, and it came down to some sort of internal wrangling with the club ownership and his contract and getting away from Napoli the way he wanted to get away from it. The Darwin Núñez thing, I'm sorry, that's a new wrinkle that people were not aware of, because on shows up until last week, I was saying vague stuff about how I thought maybe it might have been close. It was that close?
That close.
Will you just go through it again? Because that last bit, I think people are just going to be fascinated, because I know I am, just to hear that how really near to a completely different setup we could have been there.
It was that close. Sam Maguire wrote about it and people scoffed, and it kind of came out from Romano and Ornstein as well. Al Nassr with the club, they were that close to getting it done. It was literally in sort of end stages, and no one knows the exact amount, but somewhere around the 70 million mark. He missed that PSV game. He wasn't ill, Trev. It was because that deal was close to getting sorted. And check the date, people, right before the end of the January transfer window. Osimhen's deal on loan at Galatasaray was going to end. He was going to move to us. The wages were within the wage structure. That would have meant, and I know people be scoffing, but all this comes out eventually. Some of this info's out. Like, do you think I'd be saying this if I hadn't double verified it, treble verified it as well? Literally, Osimhen was on the verge of becoming a Liverpool player on loan. And then he would have had, 6 months to prove himself, etc., and go from there. So, Trev, if he is like 24 hours from being a Liverpool player in January, how could you rule him out now? Because this summer, he will have a year left to go on his deal. Napoli don't want him. He wants out of Napoli. The reason he went to Galatasaray originally was to get out and play, wasn't it? And show he can score goals and be the marksman, i.e. put himself in the transfer window. You cannot rule out Victor Osimhen. What you can do, and people will say this, injury record, yes, that plays a part. AFCON, yes, that's a consideration. The wages won't be cheap. Again, that's a true consideration. But this is an elite marksman with an elite record. So, of course, wages are going to come into fruition. But if you're prepared, as all the suggestions are, to look at Alexander Isak for 120 million is the ballpark figure, isn't it? Who's got a bit of a suspect injury record. Let's just be honest. Would you not be prepared to look at someone around the 60 million mark with a suspect, or probably a similar, let's say, that injury record? That's a better way of phrasing it. So, yeah, no one. There's a reason why people just now aren't saying Osimhen, forget it. Absolutely. It doesn't mean it won't get ruled out, in a couple of weeks. And now we've got options for the summer. But don't just yet delete the name Osimhen as well.
And just to clarify, that number of 60 or 65 I've seen as well, maybe that was euro million, that is some sort of a clause, isn't it? That is a settled figure that he can be bought for. Or did I read incorrectly, or someone's incorrect information today?
Do you know what? I genuinely, I'd be lying if I said I knew it was a specific clause. That's all I know, is that's the figure that's given, mainly because there's a year left to go. It may well be the clause, but with a year left to go, Napoli don't want him there. I suspect De Laurentiis wants him cleared out. How much he'll compromise on that? Well, there's a year left to go.
Anything else vaguely strikery related that you want to mention, or should we move on to the other contract stories we've heard?
The striker one is the sexiest position, and it's the sexiest rumours at the moment, isn't it? As it's taking shape. And we've heard so many on the docket. I mean, we didn't really even talk about Isak. That seems to feel like Newcastle are close to Champions League anyway, aren't they? So you'll probably just, as we said, delete that anyway. Alvarez has been mentioned, so you wonder if anything develops on that. There's all these names. Liverpool's priority this summer, as everyone is saying, is after a number 9. It's one of various priorities for us, as we know. So you would put serious money. There's a number 9 coming to Liverpool this summer.
Exciting for many, many reasons. We will be keeping it here. But we have heard through your several grapevines, and again, I saw little bits about this today from other people, that there are other contracts that are a little bit troublesome at the moment. And we know for a fact that we mentioned the Conor Bradley situation. And we were both saying on the show, I mean, like, if Conor's looking around and he's got an agent worth a damn, he's going to be saying, well, let's make these guys sweat. They're going to have to pay. And now, in the wake of hearing the news that it's likely we're going to, dig into the bag for Mo and Virgil, regardless of what that means. And by the way, someone earlier on talking about the clickbait 1 million per week, they obviously didn't listen to the show where you outlined where that comes from. But anyway, regardless, you can only deal with what you can deal with. It is even more difficult now to see Conor accepting small potatoes in terms of a salary, especially if Trent goes. So Bradley's one, but apparently there's a Curtis Jones contract scenario as well. Talk to us about the two of those stories.
Yeah, there's one, I think, Conor Bradley, people, as you say, have seen the stories. Curtis Jones, the info I've got in the last few days, I'll be honest as well, when I got this info, I was sleeping on this one a little bit and everything that was going on. I can say that honestly. Conor Bradley, yeah, a couple of years left to go in the summer. Liverpool are saying to this kid, naturally, with what we all expect to happen, you're going to be first choice, right? You've got a real chance to stake your claim and take it forward. So why, if you were going to be Liverpool's first choice right back, and knowing that the guy who is likely to depart has turned down the rumoured 400 grand a week, why would you accept like pennies and dimes, so to speak, for it? You're not going to. Now, digging a bit further on this, and a couple of analysts have come back to us on this, Liverpool have made a couple of offers to Conor Bradley already, and the first one was laughed at, literally laughed at by his mum. The offer was like that small. Got to remember that the suggestions Conor Bradley's on about 10 grand or so a week, which I know is not nothing, but in football terms, let's be honest of where that is. So even if you double that, it's still nothing really, isn't it, in elite football terms? It really is small potatoes in that sense. So quite rightly, as we said, all the chips are on Conor Bradley's side of the table to say, no, like, don't say you're going to give me a chance to be first choice right back and then give me a small contract. Like, prove you want me, prove you believe I could be that. Now, Liverpool are back talking with Conor Bradley, and that's great. But he's another one you forget. He's in that 2-year minefield now, isn't he? 2 years tends to be that you need to get this done. You don't want to roll it into the last year. But, well, look what we're doing now. You want to avoid all these situations. So Conor Bradley loves Liverpool. He's a Liverpool fan and all that. So we expect to get it done. But quite rightly, they ain't going to get it done on the cheap. The other one, Trev, Curtis Jones. I said we were sleeping on this a bit. It's something that, when digging and getting good info on this, is not the info I wanted to get. Curtis Jones turned down Liverpool's latest offer. Curtis Jones also has 2 years left to go in the summer, and people forget this. Curtis Jones will then be the Scouser in the team, the hometown hero, quite rightly. Curtis Jones as well, like Conor Bradley, tick that homegrown box, which we've mentioned before, haven't we, as well, and the need to keep those players. Curtis Jones is at a great age. He's wanted by a lot of Premier League clubs. He's an England international. All the ticks are in the boxes that favour Curtis Jones as opposed to Liverpool when negotiating. The other thing to note, look at the other three midfielders he competes with. McAllister, Gravenberch, Szoboszlai. We all know they're on 6 figures plus a week. Everyone knows, there's no secret on that with the deals they signed when they joined. So again, Curtis Jones is going to be looking at that and saying, well, I want parity on that level. You're not going to give it me cheap, are you? And of course, I'm an England international. I'm valuable because of my age and all these various factors. There's a lot of clubs have got interest in Curtis. Again, I expect that to get done. Curtis wants to stay at Liverpool. He loves Liverpool, etc. But they are 2 contracts Liverpool FSG are not going to get away with nickel and diming. And you just wonder a little bit how long that will run for. And it goes back to what you said earlier. I am almost getting to the stage where there's a little bit of tiredness on the transfer show, isn't there, about talking about contracts? Can we just get them done and move on to the actual transfers. We do not want these running into the 2 years. I mean, the other one, as Paul Joyce wrote about in this Mo Salah article that's on screen, Ibu Konate's still not done, is it? 12 months left to go. Again, he's demanding really big money, around close to 200 grand a week. And people are saying like, well, you know, his form's a bit patchy. He's been taken off a few times this season. The other argument is, Trev, that his camp will say, well, PSG and Real Madrid are interested for a start. I've played in a World Cup final. I've played in a Champions League final. I'm about to be a title winner. On my day, I'm arguably the second best centre-half in the league. So there's my pedigree. Oh, and by the way, you've got a million other contracts to sort and other things to do. So I don't really think you're going to want to nickel and dime me at the same time. So I am just so interested to see, even though I've almost had enough of contracts, how these three develop. But it's still really tough in the framework for whoever's negotiating these, Julian Ward, as we know at the moment. All the chips are on the player side of the table, aren't they, really, still? So it does make it interesting to see how these three unfold.
Yeah, and I'm always fascinated by getting little glimpses into how the sausage is made, if you like, looking at the background and looking at how they approach different players, like looking at how they decided to offer Conor Bradley, you know, a fiver and free coffee at the AXA or something, as opposed to just like the stories are out there. And listen, by the way, forget the stories. All of these guys talk to each other about what they earn. Don't fool yourself. They all know what they earn.
Yeah.
So when we're hearing stories that Ibu Konate is on 80 grand a week and he wants to go closer to 200 grand a week, they already know that. And so Conor Bradley's tipping along there, probably coming in his little Ford Fiesta on 10 grand a week, thinking, hey, you know, can we do something? So it's just really interesting that they would be approaching it like that with him, while saying, okay, Mo, fuck it, here's the bag, on the other end of the things. And of course, I understand they're wildly different talents, but it is interesting to see how the approaches are made by the club to the different players, depending on their status. And we'll finish with, I think, a story that's been kind of annoying to both of us over the course of today. And it has developed really a little bit over the course of today, because we had agents and owl fellas talking. Now, we've kind of had enough in the dads talking up. We had it earlier on. You were talking about it earlier on with Papa Hyson. We know Papa Diaz is inextricably linked to his son's career. He's just looking for a hot place to go dance in the stands. That just seems to be a thing. And likely he'll get that opportunity. We can't even talk about Luis Diaz tonight because we don't have any updates, but we are still expecting, like we were in the last show, big offers to come, one from Spain, hopefully, but likely one big one from the same venue as the one for Darwin, in general, geographically speaking. But we heard today, or we saw today, stuff about Ryan Gravenberch's agent.
Yeah.
That was kind of, it certainly didn't have the effect, I think, that he would have been hoping for. Maybe it did. Maybe we're very naive, but it was taken very badly. And it seemed to be suggesting that poor little Ryan is in handcuffs at Liverpool when his dream is to be at Real Madrid. And we think he's good enough to play for Real Madrid and so on and so forth. Total agent bollocks. And yet at the same time, unsettling and unnecessary for us to be reading with a few games left in the league campaign where the player in question has seen his form fall off a cliff. And then second of all, the lad that we have all just taken to our hearts and love, who scored a worldie the last game, was the only midfielder worth the name, Mr. McAllister, who just seems to be like such a salt of the earth fella. His alpha is out talking about how, you know, he's happy enough in England for the moment. Can you walk us through the details of this and just let people know what's happening? Because I think a lot of people are like me and they just rely on a show to catch them up. Hopefully we're that show for some people.
Yeah, the Gravenberch one today, Lewis Steele tweeted it out, didn't he, from his agent, his Spanish agent, it's important to say, probably pronouncing this wrong, but Jose Fortes Rodriguez spoke to Marca. Now, he spoke about, like say, the Barca interest when he was a kid, Real Madrid, and it did almost read a little bit like, hold on, we're keeping him in handcuffs here type of thing. I know they've got their eye on him, but now it's impossible. And that statement, we would love for him to play for them.
Yeah.
As Lewis qualified, and like it's got a feeling. I've seen a few tweets from the agent now. You know, when you say something and think, oh, how can I roll this back really quickly? His agents now are tweeting about, oh, it's because I'm Spanish and I love these clubs and it's my dream. It's not Ryan's dream. He loves Liverpool. Liverpool love him, and all these types of things. It's all maybe it's a bit of a storm in the teacup. Maybe, just maybe, there's a lesson there for the agent just to keep stum or to consider what you say in the future. But then again, maybe our suspicious minds think, well, there's agents maybe drawing attention and just trying to keep Liverpool on their toes a little bit at the same time. It could be argued that way, but maybe Ryan Gravenberch's agent should just be quiet from now on. And yeah, I think it's a feeling of the storm in a teacup. This one, we've said before on this transfer show that our understanding from asking around, we're repeating it again, is that there is a clause in McAllister's contract around Spanish clubs. Papa McAllister has mentioned it a few times. It's always to usually Argentinian or Spanish TV, isn't it, as well? And it's that line where he's asked about, could he move to Spain in his future? For now, I don't think so. Time will tell. And everyone can say, oh, that could always happen in the future. But when we're aware there's that type of clause, can we all just stop talking, dads, to Argentinian or Spanish TV? It would just be genuinely appreciated that way. And it's all about, oh, he's very happy, he loves it, and he lives 4 blocks away from this type of thing, and the best thing he's ever done, which it is. We love McAllister. He's our best midfielder. He's a brilliant player. We don't want to countenance the chance of him going to Spain ever at all. He's absolutely sensational. He's the key cog in our midfield. The simple fact is, at the same time, he is a sensational player. He is Spanish speaking. He is a World Cup winner. We would be a fool to think Real Madrid, Atletico aren't fully aware of him, and those circumstances. So time will tell on that one. But wouldn't it be nice if Papa Diaz, Papa Huijsen, Papa McAllister, and anyone who's got a Spanish agent would just stop speaking for a while, eh?
It's not a big ask. It's not a big ask from us. We'll move away from Liverpool with some regret towards the Premier League in general now. And obviously City, we talked about De Bruyne's exit, and I was talking about it with Jan last night on Malby in the Spot, and he kind of turned the tables back on me and asked me to compare it to Trent's apparent exit. And, I just found myself saying that, everyone was talking about how classy it was. And I don't know, it was particularly classy. He's not getting another contract. So he was he was grateful in his tone, and he was appreciative. And it's what a person should do. It's just a person thing, as opposed to, oh, so classy. But it's almost like the opposite with the Trent situation. The silence is really, really deafening. And I think, there was probably, and this is my take last night, there was probably a way to go about this that respected the fans a bit more. And I think that's probably the big difference here. But if they are going to replace De Bruyne, they are going to have big, big shoes to fill. I said to you the last day that it might be a kind of replacement in the aggregate situation, but there are some names being linked. The highly rated Florian Wirtz is linked. Morgan Gibbs-White is linked. And you mentioned, which I hadn't heard, Spurs Udogie as well. Interesting. And I know he's going to pop up again later on the show. But what is the latest on the sort of one in, one out at City of a high quality midfielder?
Yeah, it's interesting because some people have said, well, he's leaving on a free, so how are they going to replace him? I mean, De Bruyne is on massive wages. So that's coming off the wage bill straight away. And if you look at the names, you could see it, couldn't you? We mentioned Florian Wirtz for some time. Absolutely, that's a name. And to be fair, it's not a surprise. It's a name well known to world football fans. Morgan Gibbs-White, that would be one where you're like, I don't like that because he's got skill and energy, and that's exactly what Manchester City's midfield's missing at the moment, isn't it, realistically? So I wouldn't be a fan of either of those coming. But Liverpool are clearly looking now. And as it says from David Ornstein, Viana's fully ramping up that search. You won't be surprised if a bit more, unfortunately, breaks on that one. And the other thing to say is people will be like, why are you mentioning Destiny Udogie, the Spurs left wing back? Manchester City, for some reason, even though they need a right back, because you remember Pep said that Nunes can only play right back because he's brain dead, so can't play in midfield. But all the news from various outlets is they're looking at Udogie and left back options, which you're all thinking like me. But they've got Gvardiol. And, but it seems to be all the suggestions. Ake as well. All the suggestions are they're having a serious look at Udogie. And that is already why Spurs are looking at another name, which we'll come on to. All this, Trev, has just got, speaking of like an asterisk next to it, as was announced today, the Manchester City verdict has been delayed, hasn't it? Everyone was expecting like around now, springtime, it would be. No, because of the quote-unquote complexities of the case, thing will be later. Now, our suspicious mind could wonder if maybe Manchester City do a load of deals before a transfer ban or something comes in, like January, in the way they spent ridiculous sums. That's just suspicious. Can I prove that? That is just a wild theory out there. But how wild actually is it that names and big names are getting linked to Manchester City as that case is delayed? So they are going to be one to keep an eye on throughout the summer, because there's going to be players leaving, big names, and that frees up a lot of wages on the book. So don't be surprised like this if there's big names coming in at the same time.
It's my firmly held hope that after the 5 places have been granted to England for the Champions League, that Manchester City finish in 6th. I'm also hoping that it's the beginning of the end. It probably is highly unlikely. The other thing that I said to you, which is far more pessimistic, was when you told me the story about the delay in the verdict, is that, I said to you, well, that's probably just they have to get in touch with all the broadsheets, free up big 6-page spreads to talk about how wonderful Manchester City are and how great they've been for football, because, that's how it's been spun so far. That's how all of the mainstream journalists have dealt with it, is just to talk about the wonderful footballers and the great performances and what a fantastic team, and completely ignore the context that people are asking them the question in. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes, and whether or not, like you say, there might be in our in our early bird transfer window, maybe they'll go buck wild. There is more interest than Liverpool in Liam Delap. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier on that in and of itself might be a reason why our connections with him might be cooling. You mentioned Chelsea earlier, but apparently United as well, and not just them. What are you hearing around this guy who's found himself as a very sought after property? You mentioned it earlier. It's likely because of the buyout clause that he has. People don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, but I imagine that would free up then individual clubs to be doing all sorts of deals around wages and signing on bonuses and agent fees and all that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, a good striker, an English homegrown striker who's quick and powerful and has got, I think is it 12 goals for Ipswich in the Premier League? And we know where Ipswich are in the Premier League right now. For 30 million quid, that is going to appeal to a lot of clubs, isn't it? Especially even the big 6, as we talked about, even as I don't want to say punt because that's unfair, an educated gamble, isn't it? Because of what they'll see, as we talked about, our data boys, especially at this figure, love this as an option to come into our forward line. No two ways about it. And if you look at those 2 clubs mentioned, Chelsea love to buy young talent and they'll give them stupid contracts as well, won't they, at the same time as well? So this is right up their Strasser, as they say. Manchester United, I mean, their strikers are hopeless, aren't they? And we've got a story about one of theirs later on in the European section. So I think the big disadvantage Liverpool have got against these is when Delap's agent is speaking to all these clubs, you're thinking United, starter, Chelsea, starter, or one of their kids. With us, if you're honest, say it is just Darwin going out and him coming in, it seems very far-fetched, doesn't it, for him to be the main 9 replacement? It feels more like with us, Darwin would have to go and a Jota possibly, and he comes in and that's a really good switch around. But even then, you just can't envisage a world where Liverpool are saying to Liam Delap, you are coming to be the number 9. And it's not going to happen, is it, realistically? So young, English, talented, homegrown, 30 million quid in the current market. And he's got so many good raw attributes. We said last week on this show, analysts saying the thing they like about him more than anything, this is a player that can occupy 3 defenders at once. Young, quick, powerful, goals. Kid's going to pick where he wants to go ultimately, isn't he?
He is. What a position for him to be in. Like I say, it does sting a bit. He's describing him as English, which of course he is and has represented England, especially considering his elf fella used to throw the ball very far for us. Let's finish now with the Premier League stories with West Ham, who are our next opponents. And this story I find to be absolutely fascinating. They're being linked with a man who is now the record holder for the amount of relegations that he has endured. That is wild. Talk to us about West Ham and their potential business. How he does it, I don't know. But West Ham are looking for a keeper. They've got Fabianski and Areola, both almost 2 number 2s by definition, haven't they? Old keepers. West Ham, as multiple journalists are reporting, have a serious look at Aaron Ramsdale. Yeah, that keeper who's like goals in galore for South, who just keeps getting moves and moves and moves around the South in the Premier League. God knows what he's going to earn in signing on money. But yeah, there's a real chance that one happens. And we mentioned Udogie and people were like, come on, Spurs, City and all that. That's mainly because, again, stories there that Tyrick Mitchell. Now, if you look at transfer market, it says that his contract is set to expire at the end of the season. But when you speak to Crystal Palace journalists, they're like, no, that is false reporting. That is not the case. There is a little bit left on his contract, or there's a club option. So he isn't a free this summer as reported. But Spurs looking at him. Now, where does he play? Left back, left wing back. So you could almost see it, couldn't you, that Udogie going to City, Mitchell going in to Spurs. It could be a nice trade all round, possibly. I still don't get the Udogie to City one personally, but, there's a lot reporting that. But yeah, Ramsdale. I don't know how he does it, but he could well get another Premier League move. I mean, hats off to him, but I'd be very nervous if I was signing that lad. I'll be honest with you. It's a wild situation to be in. We will move now to Europe. You mentioned Gittins in the last show, and you had a little bit about him. Spoke highly of his ability, talent, all the rest of it. And there are stories ratcheting up around this guy now. When you mentioned him, it was that he had been one of the ones being considered by Liverpool. However, it sounds like there might be a slightly different situation on the forefront for him.
Yeah, we've looked at him and we are certainly not the only one. Now, without wanting to cast aspersion, should we just say Florian Plettenberg isn't always right in what he's doing before? Maybe that's a factual statement to put there. But there's multiple people have reported this. Yeah, absolutely. Looking to leave Dortmund this summer. He's one of those, Trev, that all the raw attributes are there. Under 21, rapid, and we mean rapid. Dipped off a little bit, as a few German journalists have reported to us when asking around at the end of the season, but almost expected with a younger kid. The key thing will be price, though. He wants to leave. Dortmund probably want to cash in on him and get the best deal they can. Bayern have been linked. We've talked about their desire to bring in another winger. Also, of course, there's a market for him because it's a young kid who's gone out there and really shone to an extent. Rapid, would count as homegrown, under 21, all those types of things. So it's really hard to know where he ends up, because the way I'd suggest it is he's a name that everyone's watched and all the analysts will be like, yeah, we appreciate him, rapid skills, potential and all this. But then it's like, is he your first choice for left wing? It might be almost he has to wait for other players to move, if that makes sense, and see where the dice falls on him. But I would not put a single cent on him being at Dortmund next season, mainly because all the info we've got is Dortmund are happy to move him along as well.
Now, you mentioned Bayern. There's a Bayern story as well around the winger, isn't there? Can we talk about that one?
Yeah, absolutely. We've mentioned Bayern and obviously just renewing everyone and what was happening and Thomas Muller. And as per last show, even Tuesday, were like, nothing really much on Sane. Everyone's waiting. And then it comes out today, again, via Florian Plettenberg, that they've put an offer to Leroy Sane. Now, the suggestions are based on the money. I mean, it's not small potatoes by any means, but it's actually a little bit of a wage cut for him in terms of the overall package of the suggestions. Now, all that's really known about Sane is that his contract's ending. Saudi have reached out to him. He doesn't really seem to be keen on that too much, does he? The bag's there if he wants to secure it a little bit. But the fact Bayern have gone in with any sort of wage reduction offer just makes you think, I won't be surprised if this one gets done. And literally, they just divvy up all the Muller money to everyone else in terms of renewal. It's funny. Do you remember back in the day, we were linked with Max Eberl, weren't we? We wanted to get him before Edwards came as the sporting director because he could move stuff around. Now, I'm not casting any aspersions on Max Eberl, but he seems to be very good at just renewing everyone, doesn't he, on mega money, so to speak, rather than recycling the squad. It's Bayern. It's a dynasty-style club. It's a soap opera one, of course. But, yeah, Leroy Sané, looks like there's an offer on the table. We'll see if he accepts.
Now, speaking of soap operas, there is a wonderful little bit of drama going on at AC Milan with their right back and their right back's future, because it seems as if it's not going to end particularly well for him at that club. And unless I'm mistaken, he isn't there in a permanent thing. So I assume he returns to the parent club. And what happens to him then? I mean, wasn't he out of favor there? Like, why would you go to AC Milan? What was the situation there? That we know there's all sorts of on the side personal issues that might be having a bearing on this as well. So what is the latest in terms of Walker and AC?
Yeah, this is far from certain that Bayern use that buy option because AC Milan use that buy option. Mainly, as it said, AC Milan are restructuring a little bit, a new director's set to come in there. Also, let's be honest, I know Milan have a tendency and a history for buying older players and that type of thing, but Kyle Walker is, in terms of football players, very old now, isn't he? He's clearly a diminishing talent and all those things you would want to refer to. So would you want to put that big an outlay on Kyle Walker? There's a massive question mark there. The other thing is, he's burned his bridges somewhat at City, hasn't he, with everything that he did? I mean, right near the end of the transfer window, as Pep said, he knocks on the door and tells Pep, I want a new challenge. I don't want to be at City, right near the end of that window. So he's not welcome back a little bit, isn't he? He's not really wanted back there. There's so much to this. And all the other side of the drama as well. But you can't see Milan doing this at the moment. You can't see him staying at City. So naturally the question goes, well, where does Kyle Walker end up next season, realistically? But it will just be one to keep an eye on. Like, if he does go to Milan, how much are those wages cut by? They'll be absolutely battered down. And if he doesn't, who's going to take him?
Yeah, very, very interesting to watch that one. We have one last story. Actually, I've got one I'm just going to pitch at you right at the end as well. You linked to me earlier on. But we have one last story. You mentioned, and you teased this one earlier on, about the United striker who's in a situation where, let's be honest, he's having a bit of a mare, and he is, I think, interesting some clubs in Italy and Germany. But I don't know if the fee is going to be anything like what it was United paid for him. So let's walk through this one just to finish off our Europe-wide chat.
Yeah, it kind of made me laugh, this one, mainly because for those who can't see the screen, he did an interview ahead of United's game tonight saying, we are in the right direction and we're building something special at Old Trafford, which is funny because there's a lot of journalists and different sources telling us that United are touting him around the market and seeing what they could get for him because it's been that much of a disaster for him at Old Trafford. Italian clubs interested in him, amongst others. Trev, the info we're getting is United, thinking how much this kid costs, would accept offers around 30 million just to get him off the books and allow their restructure and things to happen. And to be fair, that would make a bit of sense, wouldn't it? I mean, if United could right now do Højlund out, Delap in, they'd do it like that. Of course they would. That would be I mean, he's been absolutely hopeless, but it just strikes of how bad, how funny the recruitment's been down the East Lancs Road. But it was quite funny on the day that we're getting that info, Rasmus's interview, we are in the right direction. Maybe United see it a little bit differently for you, pal. Let's put it that way.
Last minute googly for you, and we're back to the Premier League and back to a player that had been linked with Liverpool. That's Matheus Cunha. And you showed me earlier on a story, I think it was from someone on Twitter, Transfer Sector, some of these guys. And apparently there's a link between Cunha and Newcastle United. That's a story we have to mention because a lot of people still have him in their kind of reserve list for potential forwards for Liverpool. So what is this about, and what might that be suggesting to you?
Yeah, we love a good theory, don't we, on this show? And everyone knows there's no secret. Newcastle are close to the line, aren't they, on FFP? That's well known. That's absolutely no secret. That's a statement, something that Eddie Howe's talked about, the club has. So there's zero doubt on that. The second element is Alexander Isak seems to be in the hot name, doesn't it? But people have dismissed that, etc., that, he couldn't possibly leave. And now there's quite a few journalists coming out and, absolutely. Craig Hope, who's the Newcastle correspondent for the Daily Mail, has said, yeah, absolutely, Newcastle are speaking to Matheus Cunha's agent. They've got a good relationship with him as well, Trev. It's the same agent that represents Bruno Guimaraes, who's, I'll probably phrase this a different way, but a vocal agent. Trust me on that. Bruno's agent, happy to speak, as we've said on transfer shows, is the best way of putting it. So it's the fact that that's coming out. What theory do you go down? Do you go down the string of, well, if Cunha comes to Newcastle, does that mean Isak might be coming out to balance the books? Or do you pull the other string of, is it the agent trying to soften the blow to say, well, Bruno's going to go from you probably because you need to balance the books, but I can move Cunha into you. There's that string to pull. Either way, whichever string lever you want to find, there's a question mark when a club who we know is right on the edge of FFP is looking or considering activating a £62.5 million release clause. That is going to raise questions galore.
Love it. And I cannot believe it. We've done an hour and 3 minutes of a show 2 days after we did another show, because there's that much to talk about. And listen, it's fun and it's encouraging. And we had some good news to start the day off. We have some little tidbits of hopes and dreams for you to hang on to. And we've got lots of stories from all around the other clubs. That's how we do it around here. That's how we're going to do it. So yet again, for another fantastically info-packed show. Cheers, Dave.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.